I have 2 jerseys among all sports that have a player number and name, and one of them is 14 for the Seahawks.
Oh.
I'm not ready. I understand. I still feel like I didn't really see this coming. I was quite taken aback by it, and I found out in our group chat. That was how I found out, because Sean said, "Ooh, Katie, this is probably a pretty tough day for you as a Seahawks fan." And I'm looking at my phone being like, "What do you mean? What do you mean, Sean? What do you mean it's a tough day for a Seahawks fan?" Open up Google, type in Seahawks, and then a single tear just starts streaming down my face. I am not ready for him to go. He's one of my favorite athletes across all sports.
And speaking of getting the party started,
for the victory lap though. They ain't never seen nothing like this before. Lit the room when I came through the front door. Ask me if I stress overcome, what for? Train under trees, please pardon my sycamore. Touch burning sands, cross lands and stormy shore seasons in the year, yeah. Switch gears, we keeping haters in the rear. At the blood, sweat and tears and my goal so near. I see my victory so clear. I see my victory so clear. And today, we break through. 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 And today, we break through.
Welcome into another episode of your favorite podcast that you just don't know about yet. It is the Gridiron Podcast. It's episode 64, which Katie has written in the notes as the Hacksaw Reynolds episode. We're going to get to that in a second, Katie. I'm Nick Shook. That's Katie Caldwell, the Canadian Queen. I'm the bald behemoth holding down the land. If you notice something different about the show and you've listened before, you know that some guy here with a nice hairline, it's always well manicured if you watch it on YouTube, but you should watch it on YouTube just for his hair alone, not to mention those deep pipes. Sean Barry is not here. It is just a me and Katie podcast, the first time ever in the history of the show. And frankly, Katie, you haven't even spoken yet, but I think we're off to a great start.
This is a huge moment personally for our friendship, Nick. I do miss Sean, but we're typically the 2 most unhinged ones on the pod, so we also are going into this with no plan. So this is going to be our most vibes-based podcast. So
which I think will end up being one of our best. Yes, everybody prepare accordingly, because it's just going to be me and Katie shooting the shit, yapping it up, talking sports. This is an F1 and football podcast, the only one on the planet that we know of, and now that you know of. So thank you for listening. And as always, Katie, where can they find us on the interwebs?
You can email us at thegridironpodcast3, damn those other 2, at gmail.com.
I'm not doing it.
See, this is where I did need Sean. He's here in spirit. We're also on Instagram at, I wasn't prepared for this. Is it Gridiron Pod?
Yeah, you're the one who made the account.
I know, but we had, so we had originally, at Gridiron Pod. We'd originally made an Instagram, and then I got an email from Instagram saying that it was shut down, and I reached back out to them, and they never got back to me, so I started a new one. So
yeah, because
really
Katie doesn't
stuff.
let the man win.
Yeah.
Damn it.
But the last episode, I was not here, and it was just you and Sean, which that was a delight to listen to. I was at a baby shower that evening. But Sean had mentioned that the reason I wasn't there is because I was unable to face the music after Team USA beat Team Canada in the Four Nations face-off.
Go off, Queen. Go off.
He also teased that the championship game was coming up that Saturday night. So I have a question for you, Sean. And then what happened? What the F is a mile? What the F is Fahrenheit? And it's so fun. We kicked your ass. And it's so funny because all of these Americans were so hyped when they beat Canada and blah, 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 and get that 51st state shit out of here. But it's so funny that as soon as Canada wins when it matters, much like the 2020 or 2010 gold medal game, because we had lost to the US in the round robin earlier that tournament, nobody remembers that. We won. Canada is the superior hockey country. I wish Sean was here, but I understand that he couldn't be here facing the music.
That rant lost a little bit of steam at the end. I'm not going to lie. It was hot. I was like, oh man, I think I'm gonna start sweating like I do when I eat spicy food because I'm bald and I don't have any hair, and it just starts, St. Elmo's I was in Indy for the combine. They got that shrimp cocktail and it's spicy as hell and it clears out your sinuses. And about the second bite, I feel the sweat start beating. I was like, oh god, here we go. But it did run out a little bit of steam. However, I loved it, and I love even more the fact that Sean's not here to defend himself. Now, I will question you on one thing before we actually get into the basis of the show, which is an overtime goal, a beautiful one. I think it was by McDavid. Is that really kicking somebody's ass?
Yes.
And your justification
no further context needed.
There it is.
Look at the record with Canada and the U.S. We can go back years and years and years and years. We are simply a superior hockey country.
Well, it is your sport, so you should be, just like we suck at soccer. All right, that's enough non-F1 and non-football talk. We're going to start with the NFL, as we always do. But stick around, because plenty of F1 is also on the table. On the NFL side, Katie, I know you just went off. I know
I'm not ready.
That the emotions, you felt strong in that rant, but I'm going to put you in a position of weakness right now, and I'm sorry for it. I apologize in advance, but Enya should be playing right now in the background. Who can say where DK Metcalf goes? Because he has requested a trade out of Seattle. He don't want to be a Seahawk anymore. He's not down with Mike McDonald and whatever he's doing up there. He wants to go somewhere else. Katie, how did you react when you first heard the news?
DeKalin Zacharias Metcalf. I still have not accepted this. It felt like it was like 3 minutes after Tyler Lockett's going out the door, so I feel like my world just shifted in one moment. I have 2 jerseys among all sports that have a player number and name, and one of them is 14 for the Seahawks. Oh. I'm not ready. I understand. I still feel like I didn't really see this coming. I was quite taken aback by it, and I found out in our group chat. That was how I found out, because Sean said, "Oh, Katie, this is probably a pretty tough day for you as a Seahawks fan." And I'm looking at my phone being like, "What do you mean? What do you mean, Sean? What do you mean it's a tough day for a Seahawks fan?" Open up Google, type in Seahawks, and then a single tear just starts streaming down my face. I am not ready for him to go. He's one of my favorite athletes across all sports. And the first thing I could think of was, the meme where it says, "I accidentally became important at work and it's ruining my life." I feel like that's Jackson Smith and Jigba right now. Because, man, the rest of the wideouts are bleak, man. Like, it is Jake Bobo season in Seattle, I guess.
Yes. Jake Bobo, a big fan favorite in the NFL Network newsroom, among a couple of editors at least. But
yes.
Yeah, it is getting bleak. Lockett, you knew was gone.
Lockett, I knew was gone. But to see it just pulls your heartstrings a little. Like, he, to me, feels like he is the Seahawks. Like, so many of my favorite Seahawks memories have to do with Tyler Lockett and Russell Wilson. I accidentally looked at their depth chart today. I don't recommend it. I didn't feel great. The wideout situation was pretty bleak. I'm looking at them being like, who? The next one, like, who's that?
Katie's suddenly going to get to know the bottom of the depth chart in Seattle because DK requested a trade. His cap number this year makes it an interesting situation because a pre-June 1st trade, they saved $10.8 million, which is great. His cap number is $31.8 million. That's big for a receiver. So it makes it hard to trade, which means because what people fail to understand when they think about trades is that you're not simply trading a player, which is considered in a front office an asset for assets, which would be picks or other players. You're also trading the contract that they are attached to. Mm-hmm. And when the price is high, the what you get back drops. And I saw somebody threw it out there that the Seahawks, I think it was a local reporter, that they wanted like a first and a third and a player, and that's like
Diana
laughable.
Rossini reported that they were seeking a first and a third.
That's laughable. I'm sorry.
It is.
John Schneider, you're out of your mind. $31 million cap hit. You're not getting that type of package back. I don't care. Another guy that we're gonna get to, Deebo Samuel, just got traded for a fifth. Like, I know he's not the same player he was before, but you're not. And I love DK. And no, he wasn't used enough. And Jackson Smith and Jigba benefited from that because he just became the guy who was open and who Geno Smith liked to throw to. Geno's the type of guy that spreads the ball around the field. And sometimes he doesn't lean heavily on DK. DK could thrive in an offense in which They do lean heavily on him, like the Steelers do with George Pickens. That is not in Seattle, and that's probably why he wants to leave. I don't think it's money-driven. I think it's earning power-driven in the fact that, look, I got to put up big numbers to be able to get paid again. But I don't think that this looks good for the Seahawks in the long run. So I'm sorry, Katie.
Or the
as
short
a fan,
term.
you're not going to get the. It's not going to be a trade Stephon Diggs, get a one, spend the one on Justin Jefferson type of situation, which is just depressing. But it is a microcosm of today's NFL, and it is not the only big-time trade that went down this week, or the trade request or permission to seek a trade, because in Cincinnati, NFL sack leader Trey Hendrickson granted permission to seek a trade from the Bengals. The Bengals, who had Sam Hubbard retire earlier this week, their other starting edge rusher, who suffered a season-ending injury catching a touchdown pass, which is going to be one of those fun trivia facts like 30 years from now. Like, which NFL player who spent 7 seasons in Cincinnati and played at Ohio State finished his career by catching a touchdown pass? Sam Hubbard will be your answer, and I'll be in that trivia, hopefully not sad and alone and drunk, but who knows. And I'll be there to answer that question for whoever is nearby, and they'll all look at me like, what is wrong with this guy? Well, a lot of useless information up in this brain, but Trey Hendrickson is the NFL sack leader at 17.5, and he's now an asset that could be acquired by many teams. And unlike DK Metcalf, has an relatively affordable cap number, and is going to have a lot of suitors. So, Katie, I'm putting you on the spot here, but if it were up to you, you were a GM of every NFL team except the Bengals, where would you put him?
2 answers come to mind. 1, Lions, because even with Hutchinson back, I still think they need pass rush help. I also think the Chargers make sense, especially with Joey Bosa gone, and then Khalil Mack set to hit free agency. Those are the 2 that kind of jump out to me right away.
So, interesting note on Bosa getting cut. Chargers fans think that all but guarantees that they keep Mack, because if you think about it from a money spending perspective, you have enough money to spend on 1 instead of 2. I could see that if he wants to be back. But that still leaves a void opposite him, and there's no better way to make this defense better than to replace Joey Bosa, the often hurt, underproductive, is that a word, underproductive? Joey Bosa, with the guy who has 17.5 sacks in each of his last 2 seasons, has double-digit sacks in 3 of his last 4 seasons, and unlike Bosa, plays full seasons consistently. Oh, and also, by the way, one of the few guys in the NFL who plays in the trenches with no gloves. He's a throwback.
For real?
I think he'd fit well there. Yeah.
I've never noticed
Trey
that.
Hendrickson. Oh, I always notice this because I'm weird and because I always wear gloves. Because one thing that you don't realize when you're watching football is that the way hands are involved in the trenches, your fingers get stuck between face masks a lot, and it hurts. So, like, some big padded gloves makes you feel invincible. Trey Hendrickson says, screw it. I don't need your gloves. I'm going to go out there and get 17.5 sacks barehanded. I'm going to be like the old baseball players that used to bat barehanded. I'm going to get the job done without any help from the equipment. And I think he's going to be interested. A lot of teams are going to be interested in him. I like the Lions pick that you said. I put 8 different landing spots for him because I think everybody's going to want him. And it's a contract that you can move. And it's a guy that has a lot of production. But the Lions is interesting because let's say you get Hutchinson back, which they will. They got Zadarius Smith from the Browns last year to help with him, and then he got hurt, and it was just Zadarius. Zadarius is pretty productive, surprisingly so. But what they learned last year was the importance of defensive depth. They tried to get deeper on this in the secondary, and it all fell apart over time. Carlton Davis breaks his jaw, they lose him. They end up losing in a shootout to the Commanders. How do you prevent that from happening, and how do you help the back end of the defense? You get better up front. You get after the quarterback more. And he's one of the best guys that's now available at doing that. So it's an interesting proposition. I also think that he could end up in a place like Green Bay where they need somebody opposite Rashawn Gary, who didn't have the best year ever. You could put him opposite Montez Sweat in Chicago. You could send him to Atlanta where Matthew Judon's scheduled to hit free agency. And the Commanders are another one because guess who is projected to hit free agency and who is highly productive and very economically sound? Dante Fowler. He's got to get paid, and they have the cap space to pay him. But if you're going to pay 2 guys or you're going to make a trade, I would make a trade for a guy like Trey Hendrickson. I'd give up a 2nd or 3rd round pick for him if you really want to. Thank you, DK. Because that defense overachieved last year with Dan Quinn based on personnel strength. This is how you get better immediately up front. And if you can get after the quarterback, you help the back end, like I said. So I think they're another interesting spot. I'm glad you threw that one out there. We have one more item on this list, but before we get there, Katie, go ahead.
Can I quick sidebar?
Yeah.
I don't think I actually know this. When you played football, what position did you play? Because it's
Offensive line.
Okay, it was kind of giving like you were in the trenches, but linemen.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what I would have expected.
Well, because Katie, I went from 275 pounds to 205 pounds in one summer.
Jesus.
Yeah. That's what working on a golf course and only having 1,200 calories a day will do. You drop the weight, melts off of you. I'm a little bit bigger than that now, but yeah. So
No, I learned something about you today. Maybe some of our listeners knew that, but I don't.
Now you know. If you didn't know, now you know. And if you know, you know. And the more you know.
Because knowledge is power.
Katy Perry on the More You Know star at the Super Bowl. Don't ever forget. That was a legendary moment in Super Bowl halftime history. Yeah, so like it's funny that you bring that up because I was just in Indy for the Combine, and I'm at the workouts every day. First off, 2 takeaways from the Combine. Number 1, not a sexy class because all the talent's in the positions that people don't pay attention to. Interior offensive line, interior defensive line, running back, some linebacker talent.
It's a big corner class too, isn't it?
Yeah, but not like last year where like there was a bunch of top talent.
Okay.
There's some players there. Quarterback and receiver are bad. Like, bad. Like, and I know Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders didn't participate, but I've never felt so dejected after a quarterback, receiver, running back day like I did on Saturday. Like, I got done and I was like, I don't even know who to pick.
Oh, no.
All these guys kind of suck. The quarterbacks sucked. The receivers were running bad routes. The quarterbacks were inaccurate. I'm just sitting there going, oh, my God. And like Will Howard was bad. Quinn Ewers was bad. The best guy out there, in my opinion, was Brady Cook from Missouri. It was a rough day. But with that in mind, when offensive line day came, oh, baby, kid in a candy store, sitting there taking my notes, breaking guys down, picking the team and everything that I do, the all-combine team. And I look over to my colleagues, and I'm like, there is some legit talent at guard and center in this draft. They're like, oh, yeah, because like these are draft nick guys. Like, they know. And they're like, oh, yeah. I'm like, that guy can move. That guy can move. That guy can move. I'm just like, yes, this is awesome. This is so good. This is the easiest day out of the 4. So that's where my heart is when it comes to football, is in the trench play, because it starts and ends in the trenches, just like it starts and ends with Katie Caldwell on the podcast. Katie, we got one more item to get to. It is Deebo Samuel getting traded to the Commanders. Your first reaction?
Actually, I have a question for you. Do you think the Commanders would have signed Deebo if they knew that DK was going to be available?
Well, yes, because Deebo was he was acquired on the cheap. It was a day 3 pick.
Yeah.
It did not take much. I don't know if I like the fit because McLaurin's the one. He's not a traditional one, but I also don't know if I like the fit with DK.
Okay.
So I think it makes sense. I'm just curious to see how Cliff Kingsbury uses him, because Cliff, back when he was the head coach in Arizona, they had Rondale Moore, and everybody was like, oh, he's a rocket. Watch out. And then he just like didn't do much. He had Hollywood Brown. Oh, he's a playmaker. Didn't do much. He had DeAndre Hopkins and just stuck him on the left side of the field all the time. So I'm curious to see how Cliff does with it. But I mean, if you can get a guy like that for a 5th round pick and he can reclaim some of his past form, it's worth it.
He needed out
of
of San
know
Francisco.
if they're related.
It was time.
Yeah. And he hadn't been healthy. That's the story of the Niners overall. What I'm really curious to see, now that he's out of the Niners, does he stay healthy for a year? Because that would be an indictment of the Niners' strength and conditioning program and the trainers. There are some teams where their training room and their strength and conditioning, I don't know if it's good or if it's just coincidence that a lot of guys get hurt. But the Niners are certainly up there. They've had a lot of injuries over the years. So I think this will be an interesting test case. It's not... what is it? Causation is not correlation or something like that. I don't know anything about the scientific method and things like that, but I'm trying.
You're doing
we'll
great.
We'll see. Let's get out of the NFL, Katie, because we're flying. But before, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just so high on the Commanders, and they already looked so good that like I'm excited to see how it works. I just love that team so much. I love Jaden Daniels so much. I love Dan Quinn so much that I'm just stoked to watch the Commanders. Anyone that they bring in that's extra, I'm just like, great, awesome. Because they already had such a good team last year.
On that same note, one of your favorites is staying in Washington. And who is that, Katie? He happens to play linebacker. He played for Dan Quinn for a couple of years. He's from Los Angeles and had a bad year with the Rams. His name is Bobby Wagner.
What?
Bobby Wagner.
Oh, Bobby Wagner. Right. My brain just went so blank, and the little monkey with the symbols and the hat was just like... And that's what you saw in my face, like...
Felt like I was watching Elf, and it was the scene where Will Ferrell's doing like the Jack in the Box, and he's like, pops out.
It's like, anyways, yeah, of course it's Bobby Wagner. Go on.
When you think about Bobby Wagner, what do you think?
Just Seahawks. I miss him so. He was just such a likable player and just like commanded that defense.
Nice.
Yeah.
Commanded.
Oh, I did not mean to do that. Look at that.
Good job, Carson Wentz. Take command.
He's such a good player, but he's also just so easy to cheer for as a person from everything I know about him that I've just always been a big Bobby Wagner fan, except for this exact moment where I totally blanked at who that mystery player could have been.
Happens to all of us. And I set it up poorly because I'm not the usual host. That's Sean Berry, who's not with us. Thanks, Sean. I mean, he's alive. He's just not with the show tonight.
Yeah, Sean didn't die, so
he did not
we're
die.
all clear.
He's very much alive and in Pittsburgh right now. All right, that's it for football. Let's shift gears to Formula One, where the season is technically underway because every F1 season starts. Well, this year it started with F1 75, but every F1 season truly starts when they get the cars out on the track and start testing them out. The green paint starts flying, the aero paint. They put weird contraptions on their cars. They do lots of laps, like 300 laps, which is way more than a typical F1 race. And we start to get our first impressions. And surprise to no one, Katie, Sean's team, McLaren, is still fast as hell. I don't think you're surprised by that, right?
I'm not surprised by the car being good. Whether they continue to lose to themselves, that's to be seen. But we'll see if
this can of worms.
If the team is still largely a mess outside of having 2 rocket ships. I think they will be better and learn from a lot of their mistakes. But like I talked about a lot last season, I need to see it to believe it because the car is great. The car is really fast, and I'm not shocked about that. But is the team ready?
It was very fast, quickest over 1 lap. They held a 2/10. Can't say tenths. Wow, I need tongue strengthening here. 0.2 of a second advantage over Ferrari in testing. Not surprising. But papaya rules are supposedly gone. Are you? Papaya rules. When you think about papaya rules, would you abolish them? If you were the principal of McLaren, what would you do?
I don't know if mine's going to be a popular answer because I feel like I'd almost want to go in on Piastri over Lando Norris, and I know that most people don't feel that way. I say just like let it buck and then check in with yourselves and with your team throughout the season and who's doing better and who's driving better, and not just playing nice with everyone and, like I said earlier, losing to themselves. I say throw papaya rules out the window. Although I love when we get to say papaya rules. But
Actually,
I don't know. I'm such a Piastri fan that I almost trust him more than Lando Norris, especially to finish on pole and then make it through turn 1. So I say we'll check in after like 3 races on how we should feel about papaya rules. Because I say, hey, we're starting out with Australia, which I'm really excited about that we're back in Australia for race 1.
Yeah, of course. I'm just blindsiding you with question after question with no prep, which we admitted at the start of the show. There is no prep here. We're
very vibes-based today.
Yes, and the vibes are high. But Katie, you're known as the queen of chaos. So I'm going to ask you this with the 3 teams we talk about, maybe the 4 teams we talk about. What is your chaos scenario with McLaren?
Like, what would the most chaotic situation be for them?
Yes.
That Piastri is the number 1 driver, I think.
Okay.
And that it happened
how does that unfold?
That he's better. That he's better in quali, and then he gets a few poles, and then he can actually still be leading the race after 1 lap, or 1 turn would be nice. But I'm, like, he's just grown so much, but when he first started, it felt like he didn't even need to. He just felt so ready when he started, and you're still seeing him improve. Like, he's just, and we've talked about this on the pod so many times, that he's just so calm, cool, and collected, like, to a point where I've never quite seen anyone like that, where he doesn't go high and doesn't go low at all. He's just so collected, to a point where even when he wins something, I'm like, please smile, please celebrate, like, a little bit, please, just give me something. But he's so mature for his age, and he's such a good driver, and now the team's set up so well, and he had yet another off season and then preseason testing with the team that honestly I think there was a world in which he becomes the number one driver for McLaren, and I would be cheering for that because I love chaos and because not everybody's expecting that.
And if he were to do that, what would that do to Sean?
Who named his dog Lando?
Yes. Oh, it's Lando Calrissian. No, dude, it's Lando Norris.
It's Lando Norris. I feel like for Sean, he's just got to be happy that McLaren is winning. Like, if one of them wins the driver championship, you got to think that he would just be stoked because he's a McLaren fan over Lando. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it would be bittersweet. I think he'd be happy, but he'd wish it was Lando. And I am of the belief that Lando, while a very likable guy and a good driver, is a choke artist and will never win a championship, and Oscar will win one before him because Lando will never win one, and Sean will always have to reckon with that, and we can grill him endlessly on this show for however we are around, both on the show and on this earth, and I look forward to the future in which I go up to him and go, congrats on the championship, but it wasn't your guy.
I love that guy so much.
You just slide in from the back. It wasn't your guy.
That feels like if Kimi Antonelli comes in and he's automatically number one boy with the team, and then he wins a championship and Russell never does. It kind of gives that.
That would be just chef's kiss. Yes. Just stick to your Britishisms and take second place in your team. Let's go to our next team. Red Bull is still struggling to figure out their car so much that, Katie, they put that aero paint on there, right? They throw that green stuff on there, which they were coating McLaren in it early in the testing. They did that on the last laps of their testing, which is highly unusual that they're still trying to figure it out. They couldn't really dial in the car for much of it. We kind of saw previews of this, I think, in the second half of last season. But do you envision a scenario in which, with Liam Lawson now on the big team and being driver number 2, in which Red Bull takes such a step back because they can't figure out their car that as a team, generally, they slide down the standings and don't actually make a serious run at constructors or drivers championships? Is that possible in your mind?
No, with Max Verstappen.
Speak to my heart.
Yeah, and again, everyone who knows me knows my feelings about this. It should be Yuki Tsunoda in that other seat, and I think they would have a better chance with Yuki Tsunoda. But even with their cars sliding back, I don't necessarily see it being a situation where McLaren had an Aston Martin, where they started out so hot, and then by the end, they just couldn't keep up whatsoever. Like, Fernando was on podium after podium, and then they just completely fell off. I don't really see that happening with Red Bull. I feel like for as chaotic of a team environment they've had the last couple seasons, I just feel like I trust them more. And Max is a multiple winning world champion. I'm not going to say the real amount because I think it's one less and Lewis has 8. But yeah, Max is so good, and we've seen so many times where he's freaking out on the radio and I lost my tires and the car's doing this and the car's doing that, and then he can still win it. Like, Max, I do trust so much, even if the car isn't what he wants it to be. I just love that we're having this conversation right now because last year, heading into the season, we were still talking about last year Red Bull only lost one race, and then we kind of thought last season was going to be much the same. I love that right now this is even an option on the table that Red Bull might not even crack the top 3 of cars because that's new since we did this last time this year.
Yeah, and as a Red Bull fan, it doesn't even pain me because they've had their moment in the sun, and I would, much like I became a Red Bull fan because Mercedes was so dominant and Red Bull had the best chance of unseating them, I'm totally fine with them not winning it. They can be competitive, but I would love it if it was a wide open race and Ferrari gets involved and Red Bull's involved and McLaren's involved and maybe Mercedes is involved. And it's just chaos. And it just goes right up your alley as the queen of chaos. And we just have one of the best F1 seasons in recent memory. That would be fantastic, even if it's at the expense of Red Bull. I lack confidence in them because of the whole Adrian Newey departure, and they started to slide last year. I think that it's very realistic that they don't win it this year, even with Max. And we're in for a hell of a season as a result. And maybe I'm a little disappointed at the end, but at the same time, it's like, change is good. Change, like people, I don't like change, but I think change would be very good for F1, especially with the new regulations coming. And I think a shakeup would be fantastic.
There is a part of me that wonders if they still feel enough of the Adrian Newey effect for this season, and then next year is when things start to really fall off.
Yeah, that is very possible.
That's my thought with the whole Adrian Newey of it all, just because he just left. And so many of these things are planned so far in advance. So I think they could still be good. But the next year is way more of a free-for-all, I think, with the regulation change.
Yeah, for sure. And they don't have him on their side to build toward that. Having said that, the team he went to, Aston Martin, has not gotten their wheels beneath them, I guess. They haven't found their footing, so to speak, so far. But again, it's early. I have a feeling that is never going to produce the results they want. But that this is another example of Lawrence Stroll just throwing money at a situation, saying, fix it. Fix it with the money. The money will fix it. We'll see.
Well, and maybe one day it would be really nice if they had Lance Stroll, earmuffs, but if they had a driver that wasn't a Nepo baby.
Yes,
it would be so nice for that team, especially when you bring in Adrian Newey, if both seats are available, if both seats are an option, and as long as Lawrence Stroll is a part of that team and Lance Stroll wants to drive, it feels like there's only one seat that will forever be an option with that team, and that will continue to hold them back.
It has held them back when they could have made driver changes in recent years, and they've paid the price for it. But again, the sponsorship money still rolls in, so they're going to stay with that silver spoon as long as they can. The last team we're going to talk about, Katie, this is going to warm your heart as you make your transition from whatever shade of turquoise, teal, silver, and black that Mercedes is to red. Lewis Hamilton officially loves being a prancing horse. He said, quote, I would say this is the most positive feeling that I've had in a long time after testing. That is big news for Lewis Hamilton fans like Katie Caldwell. She's going to have to get a new shirt, by the way. She's got a Mercedes Lewis shirt. She's got to get a Ferrari shirt. And I think that if Lewis starts winning races, that's going to be the quickest and easiest purchase she's made in ages.
Get that if out of here. When Lewis inevitably starts winning races, the Ferrari car is going to be good. I am so excited for this driver pairing. It just feels like, it just looks so correct. When I see them together, him and Charles just feel like they embody what Ferrari is. The whole operation just looks physically pretty great. I love everything I'm seeing coming out of there. Yeah, I'm fully there. Last year, when it was announced that Lewis was going to be leaving, I was a bit like, am I still a Mercedes fan? Hell no. I am fully on board with Ferrari, for better or for worse, likely for worse, because good things don't usually happen to teams I care about. But we're there. I'm a total Ferrari fan. I need to learn the songs. I need to learn to speak Italian.
I have one burning question within me that has just come to the forefront. How will you celebrate Lewis Hamilton's first win in Ferrari?
I feel like I can't answer that honestly on air. This is a situation for our group chat, because if I'm going to answer that honestly, it's going to be way too unhinged for this podcast. That's it, period.
It might be too unhinged for the group chat.
No, the limit for the group chat doesn't exist.
That's true. The knobs go beyond 11 when it comes to the group chat, and especially with you. That's why she's the queen of chaos, folks, and it's going to be real chaotic, and she's going to be living life on the edge with that. Some last notes from F1 testing. Williams and Alpine posted lap times that were ahead of their best quality times from last year. Any shock there? I mean, Williams has had an influx of cash. I guess Alpine has too, but those are two back-of-the-field teams. It's kind of promising.
It is promising, but I also feel like this time of year, until we see like free practice 2 in Australia, I try not to put too much stock in anything. Like, I do get it with these numbers that we've seen so far, but then I still, I just need to see it to believe it. I'm really last year I said, because Williams had brought so many new people in, and now that they have Alex and Carlos, I genuinely hope Williams is in the mix, and I think that this could be a season where we start to see some of what they've put into it, but I'm in the position right now this time of year where I'm like, I almost don't want to watch anything from testing because I'm like, I just don't want to get my hopes up or down or anything because so many times it just doesn't matter. And it's just not representative of anything that matters.
Oh, you're speaking to my cynic heart right now. You got to slow down. All right, that is it for testing stuff. We're going to finish the show. Tight show today. Just 2 people. We're moving at breakneck speed. Perfect for F1. We came up with this right before we did the show. Drive to Survive debuts on Friday, tomorrow. Which by the time we post this, it will be already out. So check it out on Netflix. I would say that the series has been neutered sort of over the last few years. Not quite as captivating as it was in the earlier seasons. But supposedly it's going to be juicy this year. So I ask you, Katie, what is your Drive to Survive wish list this year? What do you want? What's the top end? What are you sending to Santa?
Ooh.
F1 Santa.
Oh, how do I be politically correct about this? I'd like to not see Donald Trump on there, and I know we're going to, and I'm emotionally preparing myself to see that. And I don't think I'm going to like watching the drivers interact with this person. I think I'm going to be pretty disappointed by who's ramped up to talk to that person. I really want to see I want to see the ins and outs of what happened with Max Verstappen and George Russell. And I don't know if that's going to make the series. I don't think it will because I feel like a lot of that started happening like right at the very end. But man, think about how many episodes of this podcast we did where it's like that had to be another full Drive to Survive episode. Like there were so many storylines this year that I don't know how they're going to fit them all in. And from people that have had early access to it, it sounds like it's comparable to season 1, which I'm really excited about. But I'm like bracing myself for the whole Miami GP of it all. But other than that, I'm just like really juiced it's back. It sets me up well for heading into the season. I get excited about it. And what's your wish list? I'd like to see some George Max drama.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of in that same vein. Red Bull had a lot of off-track drama last year, and because it's an in-house production, I know that it will be whitewashed, kind of. But I would like to see it captured in some form or another instead of completely glossed over. Because when you're creating a documentary, you're striving to capture it in its reality, and so much of that is still unanswered, and we won't get answers from it. But I would like to at least see some of the tension that was occurring in there, whether it's the Horner thing, whether it's Jos Verstappen, whether it's Helmut Marko being a dumbass, whether it's Adrian Newey deciding to leave. Any of those things, I would love to see that captured, as well as Max's. Like, we're going to get the Max-Lando clash. That's going to be there. Yeah. Max and George, like you said. Like, Red Bull, for as good as they were also, like, they were a lightning rod. Like, they were just a lightning rod last year for all the bad reasons in the world. So I would like to see that captured for sure. And I had one more thing that I think I just lost off the top of my head. Oh, Katie, how is Sean's new best buddy, Will Buxton, going to be replaced on the show? Is he going to be on the show?
This one,
is he part of it?
I think this is the last season because he had tweeted saying that he dropped his first F-bomb, I think, which is directly up my alley. That's great for me as someone who has a potty mouth that I have to hold back. By the way, when I was doing my Canada-US rant, the reason that my brain kind of shorted out because I'm like, there's a lot of F words you want to say right now, and you can't start the pod with a bunch of F words.
I mean, you could.
It could.
It would probably drive viewership. You'd probably become an even bigger heartthrob on social media. Everybody would just be like, I love her. We're listening to this show now. And I'm like, yay, more viewers, yay. Let him fly, Katie. Uncensored.
But we just, man, I'm not ready for friend of the pod, Will Buxton, to be out of Drive to Survive. He's such an integral part of it. And we've talked about it on the pod before, like he does such a good job at weaving the storylines and explaining things for people that have never watched F1 before. Like he really is an important part of it, but he's just such a good storyteller that I'm happy we have one more season with him, but then next year we shall be grieving him. And it'll be weird going into a season without him on like the pre-race show, and have him doing the voiceovers for like the teas heading into a race. Like, I love all that shit. He's so good at it.
It's going to be very different. But I mean, they are experienced in rolling with multiple broadcast crews, but there's something about the role that he occupied that was one of one that is going to be very hard to replace. But I will say, for his shift to IndyCar, he is all in. I don't know if you saw him tweeting during the race in Florida that Sean was covering. Will Buxton was lighting up the platform formerly known as Twitter during, before, after the race. He even spoke about his love for Thin Mints. Okay, and that's how you know you're officially Americanized coming over here. You eat a box of Thin Mints, or at least a whole sleeve. Welcome. Just don't get fat. Don't get diabetes. That is an American export. Diabetes. Avoid that, please, Will. Thank you.
Diabetes.
Well, that is it, Katie. I think we've done it. We've done it under 40 minutes. That is the fastest pod in history, and I think it was chock full of information. And hopefully my hosting abilities were at least semi-comparable to Sean. I don't have the voice, I don't have the hair. And you know, it's a little unfamiliar right now, but I think we did a good job. And that's a testament to you and to us as a podcast. So again, for those of you who enjoyed the show, tell your friends, first off, number 1. Number 2, like and subscribe. Number 3, 5-star reviews. We'll take less than 5, but please give us 5. Be nice. Be kind. Okay? And also, make sure you follow us where, Katie?
At the Gridiron Pod on Instagram. If you want to send us an email, sometimes people have sent in show idea or segment ideas, which we have utilized on the pod. The Gridiron Podcast 3 at gmail.com.
I wonder if she was going to do it again without me.
Not without you, and not without Sean.
No. Yes, of course. It's something that you have to do only when the other participant is here. Otherwise, it's like telling a joke in a room that nobody gets it. You just feel like a jackass when you're done.
Oh, that's how I feel in most rooms.
Makes 2 of us. For Katie Caldwell and the absent Sean Barry. Still feels weird to say. Hope Sean's enjoying his time in Pittsburgh. I'm Nick Shook. This has been episode 64 of the Gridiron Podcast, as Katie wrote in the doc. The Hacksaw Reynolds episode. Katie, who is Hacksaw Reynolds?
I forget what his real first name was. His nickname was Hacksaw.
I feel like that's a Jim. Hacksaw is a Jim. I'm not Jim. She's not Jim. But we're out of here. Until next time, like Sean says, live life in the fast lane.
Thank you.